Kind of nice to have a little bit of spring in the middle of winter, isn't it? It's delightful, delightful. Our second reading this morning from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, is for many people the most wonderful chapter in the entire Bible. Obviously, it's a favorite at weddings and anniversary masses, and I think it also serves as a great examination of conscience for all of us to see how we're doing on the most important of all virtues, the virtue of love. How can I say it's the most important of all virtues? Because our faith says that God is love. Love defines God. It is who He is. And so we know that love is at the heart of everything, not only of our God, but that we are supposed to be about as well. In this chapter 13, Paul lists 15 different characteristics of Christian love. Okay, I got great news for you. I'm not going to go through all 15, okay? But I thought we could look at least at a couple of them and see how they would actually apply to our lives. So Paul says, love is patient. The word that St. Paul uses to describe patience means patience with people, not with circumstances of our life, but with other people. It's that specific. It's used of a person who is wronged and who has it easily in his power to avenge himself and yet will not do it. It describes a person who is slow to anger. What's that remind you of? The Bible says our God is slow to anger with us. Thanks be to God. So this patience is not a sign of weakness, just the opposite. It's a sign of incredible strength. If a person could avenge themselves and they choose not to, incredible strength of character. There's a great story about Abraham Lincoln. No one hated him more than his rival Edwin Stanton. Stanton nicknamed Abraham Lincoln the original guerrilla. And he said you'd be a fool to go to Africa to capture a gorilla when you could find one right in Springfield, Illinois. He was so mean to Lincoln. Lincoln said nothing. In fact, he made Stanton, some years later, his war minister because he said that Stanton was the best man for the job. He always treated him with every courtesy. Some years later, as you know, Lincoln was killed with an assassin's bullet. In the little room where his body was taken, there stood Edwin Stanton. Looking down at Lincoln, Stanton, through his tears, said, "There lies the greatest ruler of men that the world has ever seen." Patience won. Lincoln, living out that virtue of love always with patience, in the end conquered. In the end, it was God's way, that patient love, that carried the day. Another huge one of those 15, I think that Paul says, is love does not keep a record of wrongs. Boy, that's a good one, isn't it? I bet everybody, every human being, to some degree or another, has a little struggle with that, keeping a record of wrongs done against me. The word for keeping a record in Greek is actually an accountant's word. It's used for entering an item in a ledger so that it won't be forgotten. Keeping that record in that ledger so I won't overlook it. But for the Christian, one of the great arts of life is to learn what to forget. There's lots of things that we should learn to forget. One explorer said this, it was years ago, I'm not saying it's true anymore, but he'd been to Polynesia. And he said it was customary for each man there to keep some reminders of his hatred. Articles were suspended from the roofs of their huts to keep alive the memory of the wrongs that they had received. We too can nurse our wounds, our hurts, to keep them warm. We can brood over past wrongs and injuries so much that it's impossible to forget them, let alone forgive them. Christian love, St. Paul tells us, has learned the great lesson of forgetting and of turning those wrongs over to our God. So this is a tall order, 15 characteristics of love. to be patient, to be kind, not to be jealous or boastful or angry or envious, trusting, enduring all things. It's a tall order. How in the world can we live that kind of way? On our own, we cannot. We can't. But with every call that God gives us, He's going to give us the power to carry that out. Our God is not a trickster God. He doesn't say, do this, but there's no way you can do it. That's not how He is. The power that we have to carry out all 15 of these characteristics of love in our life is the Holy Spirit. When you're at the end of your rope, when you can't be patient or kind or trusting or enduring any longer, call on the Holy Spirit living within you. All of us are temples of the Holy Spirit. All of us have the Holy Spirit living within us right now, unless we're in serious sin, mortal sin. If so, just go to confession, the Holy Spirit comes right back in. We are temples of the Holy Spirit. Call on that Holy Spirit living within you. Say, Holy Spirit, I need your help if I am to love as Jesus is calling me to. And that help will be there. Best of all, when you and I stretch to love in situations where it's really hard to do so, we're increasing our love capacity for heaven. As you know, in heaven, we will no longer need faith. We're going to see God face to face. We won't need hope. Everything that we had ever hoped for is right there in front of us. But we will need love. So the more we live out Christian love on this earth, the greater will be our capacity to receive God's love for us in heaven.